Now I can edit it up later on anyway. So I'm going to start off by saying welcome to, I think this is episode 41. How's it actually? Are you scared of going into lockdown, Thomas? Because I hear like it's all about a hens night fucked up the Gold Coast yesterday or on the weekend or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain Gold Coast will go into lockdown either today or tomorrow. But like, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, because I heard the Premier is not going to release anything for our lockdown until tomorrow.
Yeah,
but it doesn't even I wish I could show you outside of my window because I'm at the gym because I don't do any work at home. All I do is play Borderlands 3. So I have to get to the gym to do something. And the street is just filled with cars. And not all these, like, I think Energex is just up there, so that's fair enough. But, like, U-Foods is open and random fucking, like, just random businesses. No one's sticking to this stay-at-home lockdown.
Yeah, U-Foods makes sense, though, right? Like, especially if they do home deliveries.
No, it's their head. It's just like an office. Like that's just where they can all work from home. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. It's funny that you said you play Borderlands 3 at home because when the first lockdown happened and there was truly just like online work and not much else. Daniel, the guy that owns Brisbane and Southside, he bought me Borderlands 3, and that's all we did all day, every day.
It's so much. Like there's so much you can just. I started playing it at like 9 p.m. last night, and I was like, right, I'll give it till 10. Then I'll start one down. It got to like 10 to 11 and I was like, fuck, I did like one mission. It's just crazy. But I suppose something's good come out of lockdown. I'll probably go play it after this, actually.
Excellent.
I'll probably go play it. So
I was going to ask if it's okay if I swear on your podcast, and I'm like, fuck, I'm with Jack. Of course it's okay.
Yeah. So that's what a lot of people probably don't know, actually, except for a lot of my lifters, that we worked together for just over a year, wasn't it? And we got to know each other very, very well. Almost a little bit of like chalk and cheese, because do you know one side of Pit that I don't think people see this side of you that I saw a lot of it on your coaching development was like when you like go off, like you don't blow up, but when you hit your rants, I'm like, where the fuck is this Thomas?
That's all right. I show it a little bit, but much more in the private setting.
That's it. Yeah. Like on the coaching development Facebook page the other day, like you were getting salty about some stuff. And I was like, yeah, put this all over my Instagram. It's like the passive aggressive talking about these people, but not directly. They're good people, but fuck them at the same time. So, but, today, what I want to talk with the listeners about, because this always happens. I get this idea in my head about, okay, I want to talk about like advanced and elite level lifters. And then I begin to have all these conversations with people inside of my circle about it. Like they'll approach me and be asking me questions. Like we've got states coming up and I'm really, really excited about this states because I can't remember. My first competition was in 2015 when like Brisbane was, they had all the old school lifters, like Matt Stenzel was competing regularly. I think that was the first one that Will Cros's done as well. And all the big lifters. And then after that kind of Pro Raw came along and got involved and took those people from that state level all the way up to that Pro Raw, like elite level. And ever since then, like 2016 all the way through, it hasn't been the same. So now that Pro Raw isn't there, you know, States is finally going to have probably maybe 2 people to squat 400 kilos, like Will Cros and Andrew Lang. They're both looking for the 400. You've got, you know, Will's also trying to go for that 400 kilo deadlift. And it's fucking, it puts a smile on my face going into maybe the last states that's ever going to be at this level again. Because I'm sure Pro Raw is going to be open next year. And I'm really fucking looking forward to it. But it started to have conversations with my lifters and they were like, man, how long does it take to get to that level, Jack? Like, what the fuck do I need to do to get there? And I'm like, well, maybe I'm not the best person to answer that question because I'm not yet there. But I know a guy. And I know a guy that has been, like, you've competed, would you like at the elite level in the past before Pro Raw stopped. And you also still currently coach people at those elite levels. So my first question to you, and I know you hate these questions, what do you define, or how would you define an elite level or an advanced level lifter? Is it by total? Is it like the time that they've been training for? Is it the competitions that they're competing? Like, how would you define an elite level powerlifter?
Yeah. I think really it comes down to a combination of a few things, because I've coached people that I would consider to have an elite total for their weight class that certainly weren't elite level lifters because they were brand new to the sport or had very limited experience, and so weren't good at competition. They didn't know how to pick attempts. They didn't know how to turn on and off for the day. They didn't really know how the competitions work. So I think it's a combination of having a sort of, uh, top 5% total in their competitive field, whether that's like nationwide, worldwide, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
As well as plenty of competition, and as in like plenty of competition experience, as well as a pretty unique understanding of how the sport works, like an in-depth understanding of how the sport works. I think really you need a combination of those three, probably a little bit less of an understanding of how the sport works if you work exclusively with coaches, because that's really their job. But certainly, a, a, a total that's in the top sort of percentage, as well as at least a few years of competition experience, and not just experience doing competitions, but like going up against people that are your competition, going to high level competitions. I think a combination of those two things is going to be really important for me to say you're an elite level lifter.
It's really, for, you have to practice patience as much as you practice squat, bench, and deadlifting in that time. Then, because someone like a Dylan Hellriegel who came out of fucking nowhere and totaled elite immediately. He wasn't. I remember like the owner of McDonald's said, we're a 30-year in the making overnight success or something like that. Like Dylan had been training for a lot longer than just 5 minutes to get to that total. It's just people only saw him then, and he already started at that elite level, and then he went on to break all those records. So it really is just time, like the reps, the sets, the learning as a lifter. Just on that, with yourself being like you've competed personally at the top level, what is it like on either like the comp day or the prep league? Let's talk about comp day, like, because I really it's just how my mind flows. Like the nerves when you spoke about competing against someone else who is in your weight class. You guys are neck and neck on totals and that. Like, what are the nerves like on comp day as a lifter at that level?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think if you are not experiencing the feeling of nervousness in what it is, that you just don't care. Like, there's got to be some element of that. I think a big thing is recognizing what nervousness is. Nervousness is just adrenaline. That's all. It's literally an energy system. It's adrenaline. And I mean, like for me, that's a big marker of an experienced lifter, is that they can recognize that nervousness is a good thing. It's something that's going to fuel their performance, and they learn how to harness that rather than let it affect their performance negatively. But certainly, the closer the competition is, the nerve. I was never, ever, ever anywhere as nervous as a lifter. Even like I won, I think 3 competitions by a 2.5 kilo margin on total.
Oh, nice.
But I never get anywhere near as nervous lifting as I do when I'm coaching people, where it's coming down to that.
Do you find, because if like you on those third attempts, which usually it comes down to, like you make the call, so you make the call on what that attempt is going to be, and if they miss it by, let's say a 350s deadlifts is their last attempt, and they just miss it, and you're like 347.5 would have fucking got that first place. Is that like where you're coming from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Every element of it. Like I can't explain how nervous I get when there are battles. Like it's the most exciting time, but it is absolutely nerve-wracking. Like, yeah, sure, there's an element of like it relies on the lifter to execute and to perform. Like it's up to them. I'll only make a call if I'm confident that the person has at least the ability to do what they have to do. So really, at the end of the day, it's about them. However, you only get good at making those calls by experience, and you only get the experience by fucking up. And so I've definitely fucked up plenty of calls. Even worse is when you fuck up the attempt selection and you pick the wrong number. I can honestly say I've never screwed up anyone's competition result, but I came very close to doing it at a Worlds, where I picked a number that I thought was going to be the winning number, and it was actually 2.5 kilos short of what they needed to win. Thankfully, the person they were up against missed their third attempt, so they got the win by default anyway. But I remember him pulling the third, then seeing his total and being like, oh fuck. If that was his total after I had just given him a fucking 3-minute like Tony Robbins motivational speech about why he needs to get this lift, and then he got it and the other guy got it and then he lost by 2.5 kilos, I would have, I don't know if I would have come back to Australia. I would have worked in the hills in Serbia as a farmer for the rest of my life.
And that pressure is real, because you've got to, as a coach, you've got to juggle your nerves and make sure that you're not portraying it onto your lifter, who's also probably
100%.
nervous. So you've got to be cool, calm, and collective. Like, you're going to hit this number, man, whereas inside you're like, this is all on you. Like, I don't know how to, and you just kind of got to be like, do you find you give your lifters distance at comp, like when they're going to go for their third attempts or even their first or seconds? Do you kind of like keep your distance, and just before they're going up, like, because I always hear you say your slogan should be easy. Like, that's your, whenever I hear videos, that's like, oh, there you go, there's Thomas, like, easy.
I just got nothing else to say. But yeah, 100%. I try not to hang out too much. I mean, some of it's by design. Some of it's by the fact that, a lot of comps, I've got a lot of people to look after. So I am a little bit sparse. But also, I think babying lifters is one of the worst things you can do as a coach. Making them feel like you need them to be around. I see my role as making sure that my lifter isn't doing anything dumb. And like, as any sort of up and coming coaches listening to this, as you get more and more experienced as a coach and at a higher level as a coach, the people that you're dealing with, like I said, if you're dealing with an experienced powerlifter, they know the comp, they know the game, they know how their mind ticks, and you got to learn that. You got to learn that about their lifters. You need to understand your role, when to be there, what to say, what to do, when to walk away. You have to be skilled at that. I mean, like, that thing around like not letting your nerves show on your lifters, fuck, coaches do that so badly. I don't have the ability to do that because I'm the most chilled out person ever at comps, like so relaxed, so just I don't get very animated, besides a little bit of yelling when I'm filming maybe, but like I sort of pride myself as that being built into my system. Me having a very calm and chill presence helps the lifter stay calm and chill, which is not about getting them out of the zone when it's important. I want to hype them up when it's important, but it's definitely about keeping them out of the zone when they don't need to be. The more you're running on adrenaline, the more that energy system gets drained, the more fatigued you're going to get as you go through the day.
And just touching on that, as you say, like, do you, either as a coach or even as a lifter from personal experience, you spoke about using that adrenaline when you need it, so being able to switch on in the moment. Do you have any taught yourself any rituals or routines over time that work for you, that you could pass on to lifters, or as a coach going, this really helps with managing lifters on the day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the problem is, if you go looking for it, you'll find it, and you'll find other people's rituals and routines, which there's no secret chant or formula or breathing rhythm that's going to turn on adrenaline. Really, it's just understanding how your own mind works and knowing how to channel that, and you're only going to get that with experience. So, for example, I'm certainly not the caliber of strength of someone like Will, but I feel like me and Will are almost identical as lifters in that we don't switch on until the very last moment. Yep. And I need, when I'm working with him, like the closer we get to comps and everything, he needs a little bit of that to make sure that he doesn't switch on too early. So we'll talk shit all the way up until basically he's got his hands on the bar. Like, we'll just be talking shit, because that's how he is. He's a real chill lifter as well. He switches on when he's under the bar, and that's when it turns on. For me, it's very much the same. So in my own personal stuff, it's like, if I'm chalking my hands for a deadlift, that's the rhythm and routine. As soon as my hands are in the deadlift bowl, the chalk bowl, that's when you fucking don't talk to me, don't look at me, because you won't get any sort of response. And one thing that I've learned with that then is that I don't want to devalue that process. So I actually never, ever, ever train with chalk. I only use chalk above a certain weight, which is the benefit of having a good gym with good bars. You don't really need it that much, or having good grip. So I can afford to do that. If you have shit grip, you're going to want to use chalk all the time. So that's what I mean. That advice from me is probably not the best advice for someone with shit grip, because they need to use chalk. But for me, I don't use chalk until things are heavy, and I know when I'm chalking up that okay, it's fucking game time. Same thing, knee wraps. I never get anyone to wrap my knees, always wrap myself, because when I'm putting that second wrap on, that's when everything switches on for me. And I know I've got a real short window of time between finishing that wrap and doing the squat before all of it switches off. So for me, it's imperative that I, get it done within that time. Bench I suck at, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, fuck bench. Yeah, bench is let's just hope it just comes off the chest and I can lock it out. This is just a personal question here because I'm going to be wrapping myself this competition. How far out before your name's called do you start wrapping yourself to make sure, you don't lose all feeling in your fucking toes, but also that, wrapping yourself can also take its toll on your grip, forearms and stuff like that. How do you make sure you give yourself enough recovery time before you get onto the bar?
It's a combination of 2 layers of experience. You know how long you need to wrap yourself and to get up and do it. And then you have to watch the comp and sort of guesstimate, okay, well, I'm going to need 3 lifters out to get done what I need to do. And then you play it by ear. So you do it on the first wrap. You're like, fuck, that was too early. Always try and go too early, not too late.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck, that was too early. I'll go, 30 seconds after that. So it's really hard to say, but on average, I would say that I start wrapping myself 2 lifters out. When I'm wrapping other people, I wrap 1 lifter out just because I'm a bit faster. Okay.
And I want to stay on the topic because I know my lifters will love hearing all of this stuff. Like I've got especially a lifter called Jack, like all he wants is to get, like he's 6'6", he's 130 kilos, and he's only been training for 2 years. And he started at like 95 kilos 2 years ago. So he's a very skinny dude. And he's just like, always like, how do I get to the top, Jack? Like how do I get to the top faster and faster? And a lot of my lifters are like that. And, hearing stories really excites them as much as it does me. And one of the, you spoke about it before, and between me and you, I don't think I've ever told you this before, but one of my goals as a coach, I've said this before, like the only purpose for Black Dam is to take lifters to competitions and to win competitions. Once I can't do that anymore, or I'm not producing lifters that can do it, I'll retire the brand. It's that little project for mine. So I have this picture in my head, like being able to coach someone like Jack at Pro Raw, and then you mentioned beforehand about going toe to toe with someone. Like I want that moment where I'm looking at it going, fuck, I'm going toe to toe with Thomas on one of his lifters here. And because you've told me a story in the past where you've had that with a friend of yours, another coach, who you're going toe to toe with a lifter, and the psychology that comes into it as well, like playing the game. How does that work? Can you remember that story and be able to share it?
Oh, I can't remember that specific story, but it happens quite a bit. Yeah, you got to play the game. I mean, that's the absolute most fun part of powerlifting, because it's the only time in powerlifting where it's like actual strategic design built into the sport. Probably my favorite story. I'm not going to say the competition. I'm not going to say any names, but I thrive on negativity. Like I thrive on people not liking me, when people don't like me or talk bad about me, or really? Say things about me or whatever. That drives me to be better at what I'm doing. And to be honest, I would like to think I'm a pretty likable person, and because of that, I don't actually have that many people that really, really dislike me. And sometimes I make it up a little bit. Sometimes I make up like this person wants to see me and my lifter fail, and one of the benefits of coaching lots of people is that, at big comps where you have lots of people, you got lots of options of people that you can beat. And so like at this one particular comp, there was a lifter coach, like a guy that's a lifter and a coach. And it kind of paved a story that he'd been talking shit about me, which he hadn't. Like he had, but not as bad as I made it out in my head to really drive me to push my lifter to beat him. But by design, I purposely beat him by the smallest margin possible, and it really pissed him off, and that made me really happy. But I mean, like, that's just me being a spiteful dickhead. That was a much younger, more brash Thomas. I probably wouldn't do that these days. But what's even trickier, like, and again, if your goal is to coach people at the elite and coach people at big competitions, you're going to have circumstances where you've got first and second place and they're both yours, or second and third place and they're both yours. And where it gets tricky now is like, you can't play strategy because you're playing against your fucking self.
Yeah.
that's where it gets interesting, because you want the best for both of your lifters. Maybe you've got a slight favorite for one person else. Maybe you'll say, yeah, give us $100 and I'll give them a shit attempt or something.
Yeah, we'll just throw 20 kilos extra over their estimated max, just purposely sabotage them.
Yeah.
So that first portion, like, because I know I've only got you for about another 30 minutes, because you're just so busy, mate. You're just, just one of those popular guys. What I didn't mention before is it was kind of split between, the story side of things on understanding a lifter at competition and maybe some strategies on how to get there. But I also wanted to use this time for any coaches listening, or even people like fucking Jack, who, I'm sure you love these lifters as well. Those lifters who want to think like a coach. One, it just makes your lifting, like you coaching them, so much easier. But also makes it more exciting because you get to have better conversations. What I want to talk about next is like any significant changes to a advanced to elite levels training cycle to a more like intermediate lifter, and like bridging that gap. Because like, for example, if we talk about training phases throughout a 6-month block, for example, you wouldn't have a more advanced elite level lifter perform as many like hypertrophy blocks as intermediate level lifter. Can you just go into a little bit more of that with your experience of coaching both sides of the fence?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's several layers to this, and like, it's always the hard conversation with programming is that it's so contextual. So I'll try and keep it as general as possible.
Yeah.
I kind of see the magical programming zone to exist between 70 and 85%. That's where I'm going to spend most of my time with people in general. And so the less experienced lifters are going to spend more time in the bottom half of that, because they probably need a better body composition. They probably need to build more muscle. They probably need to get more skill work. The more experienced lifters are going to spend more time in the top end because they want to build more strength. Building more muscle or size might be a disadvantage. So for example, if I'm working with Jen Smith, who's like walks around at 62 kilos, very lean and very muscular, it's like, we can't afford to put 3 kilos on her because she competes at 60, or sometimes even the 56s, right? So we have to be selective about the kind of blocks that we put her through. So it's more strength focused most of the time for her. So really it's going to be contextual based on that. But like, the last thing lifters or coaches want to do at this stage is start to get that snowflake syndrome, where they think they need something special or different, or start to lean a little bit too much to what they see other people doing and drawing too much inspiration from that. So at the moment, I'm getting some personal mentoring from a guy named Dr. Pat Davidson. And one thing we were talking about last week, specifically, maybe not everyone knows, but my whole coaching approach is quite narrow. It's quite, it's based on broad principles, gold standard sort of stuff that I've reverse engineered from. And so when it comes to programming, I look at it very much the same as I do technique. Everyone's looking for the differences. Everyone's focused on the individual. I don't think like that. I think, okay, we're all the same animal, doing the same thing, doing the same tasks. We've all got shoulders and hips and torsos and cores, and we're all doing squat and bench and deadlift. We're all doing the same thing. How much do we bend to the individual? How much do we make the individual bend to the system? So my programming style is very narrow and very bending individuals to the system. And the system being, elite lifters tend to think, I only respond to sets of 3. I can't do sets of 8. It's like, well, can you do a set of 8 with the empty bar? Yes. Well, then you can do a set of 8. It's all about scalability. And it's like training, the human body is amazing. We've got this high level of adaptability. If you can't run a marathon today, but you train for it for 2 years, you'll be able to run a marathon. You can't squat a set of 8. If you can't do 6 sets of 8 today, but you start building conditioning, you're going to be able to do that. And so when it comes to the differences between elite and novice or intermediate lifters, elite level lifters that haven't had much of an understanding of programming, they've just ridden the wave due to luck or genetics or gear or whatever it is to get them to their level, sometimes need to take a step back and go through what's principally important. So the perfect example of that is Dylan Hellriegel, right? So like you said, what makes an elite level lifter? I picked up Dylan at Pro Raw 10. He squatted 355. He benched, I think he only benched 220. He had a sore pec, and he deadlifted 400. Yeah, he deadlifted 400. The next Pro Raw 1 year later, he squatted 455. He benched 250, I think maybe 255, and he deadlifted 410. So his deadlift was already, elite, but his squat was very inexperienced in terms of technique. Programming was, based on someone who had a big squat rather than based on an inexperienced lifter. Right. And so, us applying that mindset, bending the individual more to the principle, spending more time building reps, building volumes, building patterns, and then taking that and putting it into an experienced lifter's strength level. Fucking voila, 1 year later, we've got 100 kilos extra on the squat. Doing exactly the same thing with this bench dude, Andrew Cooper, right? So first comp, he did 272. I picked him up shortly after that. Next comp, he went 295. This next comp we do in June, just as like a spoiler alert, we're probably going to open with 300. That's how the training is looking at the moment. And it's exactly the same thing. It's like when you max out every week, or when you just do crazy like circus shit, doing 200 for 5 sets of 10 for the sake that you can, and then you take that and put it into a principle-based progression, thinking, yeah, he's fucking strong, but powerlifting wise and experienced, blend the two together, voila, you get an amazing lifter at the end of it. Right.
Okay. So. Fuck, there was a lot in there that my brain was just like, ask that question now, but then I didn't want to interrupt you. Because no, it's fine, because it's not necessarily like the type of programming is going to change. Like a low bar squat, Dylan Hellriegel will do a low bar squat the same way as like your intermediate lifter will do a low bar squat, as well a pause squat. It's just that the scaling of the program will change. Mm-hmm. Like
and even then, it's not all that much. Like people are like, oh fuck, big dude squatting a shitload amount of weight, he's not going to be able to handle as much volume as like a little girl squatting, a quarter or a fifth or a sixth of that weight. Yes, that's true. But the difference isn't like, okay, he does 1 set, she does 10 sets. It's not that big a difference, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, and you've got a hell of a lot. Because how many like elite level lifters would you say are under the zero banner now?
Oh, I don't know.
Got a hell of a lot in there, because you're always at the fucking competitions. So
I don't know.
When you're talking about the bending the lifter to that style of programming. We, like you said, we all have hips, we all have shoulders, etc. For someone listening who wants to break through into that, with time, they have the talent, they have the drive to do so. It's not about going as heavy. I'm trying to speak to these people now. It's not about going as heavy as possible every single session and working constantly of 85% plus for, in our experience, singles, doubles, triples, because that's what you see all the Americans do, right? And that's huge at the moment. The Yanks seem to be everywhere all over my Instagram, and all they're doing year round is top sets. Do you see what downside do you see of someone, who has very little experience in programming, like going towards that side of things and being detrimental to them in the long run?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's really interesting, because if you ask those people that are being influenced by, seeing those lifters in the States or wherever they are doing these top sets all the time, ask them, do you think it would work if you just maxed out every week? Fuck no, that's dumb. That's what novices do. It's like, that's what you're fucking doing. That's what they're fucking doing. And so then you ask, what is driving their progress? They're like, well, actually they squatted, 350 at the last comp, and now they're squatting 360. They got stronger. It's like, yeah, but what's driving that progress? Is it that top set that they post on Instagram, or is it the fucking drop sets they did afterwards? And then the question is, what does the top set serve? Is it serving a purpose, or does it just look cool for Instagram and that's what drives their following, And so there's kind of layers, not to demonize the idea of doing top sets. If you're RPE based, the top set is often the I guess the decider set that determines the work that you can do for the day. But the thing I say to everyone is that lifting heavier doesn't make you stronger. As in, like, just adding weight to the bar is not the only variable that we play around with to make you stronger. My programming might be a little bit different to the conventional Instagram programming in that sense then, in the sense that, you know, my lifters that lift really heavy don't really lift that heavy in the gym that often. But what I can say is every time we show up at a comp, we get better and we get stronger and we win. And what I can also say is that my lifters do comp after comp after comp, year after year after year, versus the typical Instagram lifter, which shows up, is really strong for a couple of years and then disappears off the face of the planet because they've fucked themselves up by doing top sets every week. That would be the biggest thing, is like, you know, you saying, what do I see as the downsides to this? Just longevity.
Yeah. And with sticking on the topic of longevity, like, you know, we know there's only so many miles that your ligaments and tendons have, and, you know, just maxing out every week and thinking that's how it goes. Especially the intermediate lifters looking at those elite level lifters and like, oh, if he's doing it or she's doing it, I should do it. And it's like, no, you're not them. When we're talking about longevity, not only physically, but the mental side of things for those lifters at the top, you know, I think I saw, was it Andrew Cooper? Is that his name? Mm-hmm. Yeah. He, you know, he's not young, is he?
No, he's 42 or 3, I think.
He's 42. And I think I saw him benching today, like, was it 4x6 or something like that at 250 odd kilos?
No, it was 3x5 at 245. Yeah.
255.
And then another 3 or 4 sets of 5 at 210. Yeah.
And just to be able to, as a lifter, to go through that style of training year in, year out, like how does a lifter at that level, or even like you understanding coaching lifters at that level, stay in that mindset of, right, keep fucking going? Because those sessions aren't short. Like, it's all well and good to be working up to 144 by 5. Like, that's maybe like 3 jumps from the bar and then I'm there. But you're looking like 250 odd fucking kilos to warm up for bench press, then hit the sets, then hit the back offs and go, fuck, all right, accessories now. I've got a wife and kids at home, plus, you know, a job. Like, how, like, mindset wise, how do they manage that? Especially since they don't get fucking paid for it.
Yeah, no, funny thing that you should mention that with Andrew, because he takes like 2-minute rest periods. It's pretty crazy. He gets up, takes his wrist wraps on. I'll turn around. He's putting them back on. I'm like, okay, fuck, here we go again. He's so fast to train. It's unreal. Yeah, I think, you know, I understand you asking that question. But if that question was posed to you as a lifter, your answer would be you answering because someone asked the question, rather than the reality, which is like, you just fucking do it. Like an elite level lifter, there is no question to it. It's just brushing your teeth. You just do it. You don't have to find motivation. Motivation is a fast for people that are unmotivated. Motivated people aren't motivated by extrinsic factors. They just do it. And so, like, for most people, that is, and that's what kills powerlifters a lot of the time. If, you know, they're training sensibly in terms of longevity, the thing that kills them and makes them salty with the sport is that there is no real reward. Yeah. So, you know, lifters beat themselves into a hole, and when it turns into work rather than love, then that's when they're like, what am I actually doing this for? Like, you know, these peaks are fucking me up. I'm spending too much time away. And that's when we tend to lose elite level powerlifters that are training sensibly. So I use that word there, love, because I like to compare this to a romantic relationship, right? When you're in a romantic relationship, at first, feelings come first, actions follow. You feel good, so you do actions. You take the person out, you buy them a present, you look after them, you care for them, you send nice messages, you check on them. A couple of years later, honeymoon period's over. Now actions need to come first, and the feeling is reciprocated and the feeling follows. It becomes work. You have to actively try to maintain this thing. That's training, right? At first, you train, you get stronger, it's there, you get the results straight away. It feels good every time you do it. Once you've been doing it for years, your progress is slower. It's work. You go, you train. Training is hard. It should be hard. Training should not be easy. If you want to get better at something, it's work. It takes effort. It's hard. And so that intrinsic motivation, that automatic drive, the elite people just have it, that it's not a question. You just go and do it. And it's only when extenuating circumstances kind of impede on that you see people dropping away from that. So if you're sitting there asking, how do I find motivation to continue to train? You're probably not going to be the elite level lifter that you want to be.
Yes. It's would you say it's just built into them, or do they?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's athletic mindset. A lot of people think they have athletic mindset. but it's the equivalent of lust, not love. You know,
Yep.
they want it really bad in the moment because they see everyone else has it. It's a very like envious, jealousy kind of motivational drive rather than I want this for me. And that's, I mean, coming back to your very first question, I think that's another big thing that separates the intermediate from the elite. They stop lifting for other people and start lifting for themselves. Like,
right. Okay.
they're driven by competition, and athlete always is, but a big part of that competition is to satisfy what's in here rather than show everyone that they're better than this other person.
And that's it, because it's not just you only see the highlights of comp day on social media, especially if you're not at that competition or you're not coaching, you're not lifting, but you forget about the 6, 8, 12 months of the hard work, the boring stuff that you have to do, and constantly going back and hitting the same numbers for better reps, better sets, rep PBs, and to then have that. And that's what kills a lot of lifters, I think, is they work so hard for, let's say, 6 months, and then on comp day, they don't get the result that they want. And then right there and then, as I've seen this before, right there and then, or after competition, is when I find out just how bad they want it. Because if they don't get the result at comp they want, they go, oh, fuck, I don't want to do all of that over again. And then they're just like, I'm going to go back to just strength training. And then it's a lot easier for them. The commitment's not there, rather than going, do you know what? I need to get my ass back under that barbell and start lifting again and make sure this doesn't happen again. So
yeah,
with those like more high level lifters, how like, this is a question for me. When we're talking about conditioning, because there's only, I think of someone like Matt Stenzel, right? And we've spoken about this before inside of the coaching development program. You keep him inside of that kind of like 70 to 80% plus all year round, isn't it? And just going back and forth inside of those percentages. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would say he spends most of the time between 75 and 90. Yeah.
75 and 90%. How do you manage to keep his conditioning there as well? Because I assume there's only so much he can, like, how many sets and reps that he can constantly hit at that. Is that the side of conditioning that you keep in, or is it you ramp up those accessories to make sure that, those 4x5 that he's done, that's 20 reps under a heavy amount of load, but all of his accessories are, sets of 10, 3 or 4 exercises. Like, how do you manage a lifter's conditioning at that level?
Yeah, I mean, it's a certain degree of it is just built in by design. Whether it's because again, context is everything. You can achieve conditioning in so many different ways, as long as it's specific to the task. Like that's the idea of general physical preparedness, right? GPP. You're not just doing cardio, you're getting your muscles ready for the kind of conditioning that they'll need to do the task that you're about to give them, right? And so how do we manage it? Well, we cycle through phases. We don't spend heaps of time just doing sets of 4. We'll cycle back. We'll do, sets of 8 to rebuild some work capacity and then come back up, at various points in time. Maybe we manage it by how we program rest periods or supersets. Like there's plenty of ways you can build this in. I think a lot of lifters lose conditioning because they buy into this notion that powerlifters need long rest periods, which is largely bullshit.
And they get lazy. It really just comes of they use that as a way of getting lazy and not taking their rest times. And a session that should have taken an hour and a little bit becomes like a 2-hour training session because they rested fucking 4 minutes, not just for their squats, but for their fucking leg press. And
yeah, and I mean, like part of that is positive, part of that is community, part of that is the kind of environments that we create, foster good, healthy community, and people are catching up and engaging with each other, helping each other through struggles, which might take a 5-10 minute conversation if someone's having a bad day. Like I get all that, but if it's a consistent theme where you always train super slow because you're just fucking gas bagging in the corner and starting your own little coffee club inside my gym, like that's a different story. That's on you. That is true laziness. So it's a little bit of give and take. We need to, as coaches, make sure that lifters are staying on top of it, but lifters need to take some responsibility and not spend the whole session talking and remember that they're there to train, not to exercise with their friends. That's
right. Yeah. Especially when you get to that level. And do you lay down the law with them, Thomas? Are you like, listen, mate, don't fuck with me here?
No. You know me. I'm not a very militant coach. Because one of the benefits of coaching lots of elite people is that if you want a high quality elite level sort of coaching product, you have to have what it takes to get the best out of it. Like, it's up to you. You can go out and buy the most high powered computer in the world. It's not going to make you better at, video editing. You have to drive that. You have to create that. It's kind of how I look at it. Like, I'm not here to scream at you to rest less and all that sort of stuff. I feel like that's very, that's very preschool. I think some coaches have that inbuilt into their style, and I don't have a problem with it. My opinion is kind of like, I'm too busy and not interested enough to babysit my lifters. Like, I expect them to take some. Like, it's really, I mean, you'd get this in your situation as well. It's really easy to forget that we coach adults.
Yeah.
It's really easy to forget that we coach people that should have like free will, free thinking, and take some own fucking responsibility for their actions. And very easy to then start to baby everyone and start to treat them like they're children because they're acting like fucking children. It's just not a bridge I want to cross. I'm like, if you want to treat it like a joke, then when you perform like a joke, that's on you.
Fucking oath. So I just want to get your thoughts on, kind of finally, as we're leading in here, like programming for a peaking block. Like, that's something I have yet to play around with. And after reading and watching books, like the Scientific Principles of Strength Training by like Chad Wesley Smith and all of those guys, talking about like peaking blocks of those level lifters, because of the weights that they have to get up to, the changes between, like, say, a 4-week block, 1 4-week block that, say, an intermediate lifter will need to do. They'll spend the majority of the time in that strength training. We've had that conversation before, you and I, and then they'll only need 1 peak block versus like someone like Will or Dylan. They will need maybe like a 6 to 8 week peaking block to give them the time to get up to those numbers, so that you're not creating too much neural fatigue, making sure they're not getting too banged up. Is there anything else, like, for yourself, how you program around that?
I think the important thing to always remember is how long a peak actually is. Because so oftentimes we call a peak, like people will say, oh, I'm doing a 12-week peak. It's like, well, you're training for 12 weeks and that's when you're getting serious. The actual peak is that last 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
So like the actual peaking is a very, very, very short period of time. If it's longer than 3 weeks with a very high end lifter, they're going to be fucked. They're going to peak in week 3, then keep training for 2 weeks and have a real shit comp. It is the absolute most difficult part of programming peaking. Why? Because it takes the most history, takes the most experience, it takes the most balls. You really sometimes have to make assumptions and guesses, especially if you're peaking with someone that you haven't peaked with very often. And it is all a matter of timing. Right. And so, like, for people to understand timing peaking, just think, how many times have you tried to peak, done a competition, had a shit day, gone and maxed out the next week and got PBs? You peaked too late. How many of you have had a fantastic 2 weeks of training leading into the comp and then had a shit comp and then a shit week afterwards? You peaked too early. It's a matter of timing and knowing how to time peaks. It's not something that can be explained in 2 minutes. And so much of it heavily relies on your overall peaking style and just experience.
And you mentioned before, like, knowing the lifter and having that conversation with them and understanding, you mentioned just before about your peaking style. Like, I know Will, and even I've been trying it recently with just like heavy top singles, top doubles, like a top set essentially, and then back offs from there. But knowing the lifter and being able to have a conversation with them, like, it is, I wouldn't say it is as much of their responsibility as yours in the peak, but it very much is making sure that like the responsibility is on them as well to have that conversation with you if they're not feeling great. Because what is it like for someone like, you've trained at those, 300, mid 300 kilo plus numbers and that. How do you feel like 2 weeks out from competition when you're at that? Yeah, and that's kind of like how it is for most people, right? That neural fatigue's there. You feel a little bit banged up. You're like, fuck, it becomes more of like an effort to get to the gym at that point. And as a lifter, it is your responsibility to have that conversation with your coach and be like, you might need to, do you ever find that sometimes you need to pull back? How often do you find like, okay, we need to pull back from numbers that we program? Because you know, I've had conversations with you before about that. Peaking's really kind of like, one week it can be like, fuck yeah. The next week it's like, oh, we have to change a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, like there's the influence of external factors, you know, bad days or stress at work or, you know, poor nutrition or poor sleep or whatever. All of that is going to be exacerbated during a peak. I think the biggest thing for both lifters and coaches to remember in the last 4 weeks leading into a competition is that this period of time, you will not get any stronger. You will not get any bigger. You will not get any better. This period of time is literally just practice. And so the best time to fuck up, to have bad sessions, to have things feel too heavy, to fail lifts is in this 4 weeks. That is the best time because it's not going to take away from your training. And it's also going to inform you as to what's to come, as to what to expect. This is another thing to answer your original question. What's the difference between an experienced lifter and a not? And an experienced lifter can emotionally disconnect from the number. They can fail a 320 kilo squat and be like, I failed a heavy squat, regardless of what number it was. They can fail it and then not be afraid to go heavier the next week, thinking I failed last week, because they're just like, it's a heavy squat and I had a shit session last week. The idea of numbers being scary goes out the window with experience. You just see everything above a certain percentage is heavy, everything between certain percentages is medium, and everything under that is light. Like numbers don't exist anymore. You're just training. And yeah, so during a peak, remembering that you're not actually getting any better makes it far easier to react as a coach. And once you know this as a lifter, when things don't go absolutely perfect, it gives you a little bit more direction. A young coach or a young lifter is going to miss a lift or see a lifter miss a lift and be like, fuck, what do I do? How do I save this? I need to save this. It's like, it's already saved. There's nothing wrong with it. It was just a funky session. Like, who the fuck cares? It's like, just clean it up and make sure you've got all the information you need to make sure that on the day you pick the right numbers. Simple as that. Don't freak out.
Don't base your whole prep around one bad session or even one bad week. You know, I know it can get into lifters' heads, like 2 weeks out, you have a bad week of training and you're like, fuck, I'm not as strong as I was. And do you, from a lifter's point of view, when you're saying about disconnecting, I know this would be a hard question for you, but you know, how do you do that? How do you just if you have a bad week in training, a couple of weeks out from comp, like how do you disconnect from it and just go, everything could be well at comp?
Yeah, man. I've been powerlifting, doing the sport for 14 years, and I can't tell you what the transition was like because I don't remember it. But I can distinctly say that, you know, my most recent peak was the December comp that I did equipped, and everything was going really good, too good because I peaked too early. And I peaked too early because I was unfamiliar with what I was able to do and the kind of fatigue that I'd create in the suit. That was a learning experience for me in terms of peaking. I screwed up my peak a little bit. I peaked really well 3 weeks out and then I didn't have a shit comp. I had an okay comp, but I could have done much better based on the training, right? And so in those last 2 weeks where everything was going to shit and I was performing like shit, it's just like, okay, well, now I've got the data to suggest that the numbers that I was training for and that I thought I could hit, I'm now unable to hit because I peaked too early. And therefore, here are the numbers I'm going to hit on the day. And it's just like, it's just a matter of like, you've got the option. You go in with an ego and you think, my training says I should have been able to squat 400, so I'm going to fucking load it up and then get injured or miss it 3 times. Or you go in with like, here is what I'm capable of doing right now. And that's what powerlifting is. That's what strength training is. It's lifting what you can lift on any given day and recognizing that not every day is the same day. A big part of like emotionally disconnecting from the weight is just learning to see weight as resistance. And like, we can talk about this till the cows come home, but it's reverse engineering it. It's like, you know, I can tell you when you break up with your girlfriend or with your boyfriend, I can tell you, look, man, time's going to heal everything. It sucks right now, but in 6 months' time, you'll be okay. You'll get past it. You're grieving. That doesn't help you in the moment. So me saying like, you know, you just have to not think about the weight. That doesn't help you in the moment. But the more you experience it and the more you know your max is 300 and 290 feels heavy one day and light another day. You're like, what the fuck is going on? It's just like, it's a fucking heavy weight. And sometimes it's heavy and sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy.
And to stop looking into things, like not be an overthinker. Because I for some reason, powerlifters have like overthinkers big time when it comes to that. They have like, you say, you know, their 1 rep max is 300. 1 week, the 290 feels light. Next week, it feels fucking heavy. And they're like, maybe that like extra 4 minutes of sleep I didn't get really fucked me up, or like, and it's like, maybe it's just none of that, and just chill the fuck out. And I think what you said before was a huge piece of gold for lifters, in just understanding that you are going to have bad training sessions. You are like, it's inevitable to have at least one bad competition, even if people didn't pick it up. Like, you've been competing for 14 years, Thomas, considered one of the best coaches in Australia, and you still have fuck ups. Like, you peak too early for a competition, and it's like, and that's okay. Like, if someone who's even those intermediates or those advanced lifters, regardless of training age or experience, sometimes you just fuck it up, and you have to be okay with it. And I guarantee, I peaked too early for my last competition, and you have to take those lessons and remember it for your next comp. And that's kind of where the excitement sits. I know that for a lifter, but as a lifter myself, learning from your mistakes and laughing about them later on, like months later, not like a day later, like, oh, I fucked that up, like months later, and go, fuck, you're a retard. Like, and going back on it and learning from it and making sure that you don't do it later on, that there is the different, like I would say, the mindset difference between someone who just wants to train heavy and do some competitions versus someone who loves like the sport of powerlifting, being as strong as they can. And for people who are listening, go back and please listen to that, because I think it's super fucking important you understand that failure is inevitable in this game. Like, you're lifting maximally. Just one small thing can go wrong, like a missed groove with a 300 kilo squat, and it can be like game over with missing a lift. Be okay with it. Move on. And I know I've only. Oh, sorry. Go on, Thomas.
I was just going to say, think of it like, disconnect from lifting for a sec and think of it as anything else in your life that has taken work. Think of it as like, you learning how to spell. If you gave up every time you fucking spelled something wrong, you'd be useless. You would be illiterate. If you play an instrument, if you gave up every time you made a mistake when you're playing a song, you'd be shit. You'd never get past day one. It's like, fuck, there are mistakes with this. And the best musicians, the best fucking whatever, the best sports people, the best everything, they make mistakes, they screw up, they have accidents. It's just like, the art of being experienced and getting better at it is that A, you get better at making contingencies for those mistakes, and B, you get better at dealing with it. And on top of all of that, the better you get, the less often it happens. You screw up a lot less.
Oh, and that ranges from the beginners all the way through to those higher advanced level lifters. Just on a side note, do you find is it harder to work with elite level lifters or novice and intermediates? From they often say, like, those people who are at the top, they've got that bit of an ego, and it's kind of like they think they kind of know stuff, and you're like, shut up, versus get those young guys and girls.
I used to be able to tell you a defined difference, but the wiser I get about it, the more I would just say it's actually just different. And that, at the elite level, you still get the whingers and the complainers and the overthinkers and the people that freak out at every decision. And at the novice level, you get the people that are extremely mature about it all and extremely intelligent and rational about it all. I think it's less different than people imagine it to be.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wondered about that, because we've had.
I know that's a very underwhelming answer, but yeah.
No. It's because we've also had conversations in the past about particular individuals, and I'm like, you see them on social media, you're like, fuck, you have a big ego. And then speaking to someone like you who's worked with them in the past, and you're like, fuck it, that person's a dick. Like, okay. Yep. All right. Well, I won't keep you any longer, Thomas. Thank you for coming on. People can my lifters will know who you are. I can find you at Zero and fucking just basically everywhere. You've got what, 3 gyms now? You got the third one just open?
Yeah, third gym opens in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. And then do you have a 4th on the way? I swear I heard through the grapevine.
Fourth is on the way. Not 100% set in stone yet, so I can't say anything about it, but it's certainly being planned.
Oh, that's exciting. All right, Thomas. Well, we'll wrap that one up there. If anyone
Thanks,
has
man. Thanks for having me.
This was great. Yeah, it's been like over a year I've been doing this, and I haven't had you on, but I just wanted to wait for the perfect time. So, invite me on Peak Speak whenever you like. It's okay, but I'll wait for my invitation in the mail.
It'll be there.
All right, Thomas. Thank you very much, dude.
See you, man.